Okay, well, we'll get started then since I'm a little late and we've got a late arriving crowd, fashionably late, I guess you would say. So today we're going to depart from contracts and I'm going to talk about ethics. Ethics is a chapter in business law, even though there's not really any such thing as the law of ethics, like there is the law of contracts or criminal law or some of the other areas that we study. Ethics is more about what a business should or shouldn't do, or what a person should or shouldn't do in their capacity as an employee, employer, owner, those kind of stakeholders in the business community. Ethics is at its core not entirely, but fundamentally personal. Our ethics come from inside. Our ethics are formed by our beliefs, by our values, often by things like religion, culture, societal expectations, our environment, our families, the things that but probably most of our experiences. So all of those things come together and they shape an individual view of ethics. That's a little bit easier to think about than when we talk about, well, what shapes the ethics of a business? Business is not necessarily a living entity. It's made up, it's run by, it's worked by people, but in and of itself, it's not a living, breathing person. So, what is the role of business in society? And that's kind of one of the things that business ethics looks like. We're going to do some the assignments for the ethics unit, which I'm not assigning today. I'm going to explain those next week. But they are designed to look at just those two questions. One of your assignments is going to be that you're going to examine your own personal ethics. And then another assignment for this unit is going to be that you examine the ethics of a corporation that you pick through some reporting that they do. But again, don't sweat any of that today. I just want you to listen today. I'm going to assign those and explain those next week. So hopefully by now, 4 weeks into business law, you have appreciated the fact that there is so much gray area in the law. Same thing with ethics. There is an idea that at the very minimum, a business should follow the law. That if we're talking about what are the ethics, what are the obligations of a business, this idea called the moral minimum means that at the very least, we expect businesses to follow the law. But a point that I want you to appreciate is that just because a business is following the letter of the law does not mean it's ethical. Legal does not equal ethical. The flip side of that is, if something is illegal, is it always unethical? Maybe not. That's gray too. We're going to talk about that today. But I want you to appreciate that just because something's legal doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Just because you're following the law doesn't mean that you're ethical. I think we could make an argument that if you're breaking the law, then you're unethical. But there would be exceptions to that we could probably all think of really fast. This idea of the moral minimum is that at a baseline, a company should at least follow the law. Some companies have their own private code of ethics. And anybody work for a company that has your own code of ethics? All right. Some large companies will lay out, will codify, will put in writing what their company's ethical beliefs are. Those are kind of aspirational in the sense that a person's job performance is not necessarily, or their compensation or their success in that job is not necessarily tied exactly to the code of ethics. Certainly somebody might lose their job if they do something unethical, but those are mostly, I think company codes of ethics are mostly just aspirational. This is what we believe. This is how we want our employees to do business. This is sort of what our core values are. Some professions also have their own code of ethics. For example, lawyers have a separate code of ethics. Each state creates a code of ethics for the bar, which is the group of lawyers in that state, and we have penalties, not criminal penalties in the sense that if we break the code of ethics, the bar can penalize us in a criminal way, but we could lose our license. So lots of professional groups, accountants, doctors, cosmetologists, I mean, you might have their code of ethics that if that's violated, you might then become ineligible for whatever that association does, licensing you to practice law, practice medicine, do those kind of things. So those exist also. But we don't have a section of the law that is ethics. Like we don't have these ethics laws. We have some laws that govern things like, think about campaign finance. You hear that a lot in politics about congressmen, congresswomen, elected officials being investigated for ethical violations. They might have broken a law, but we don't just have this one set of law in a book that we call these are the ethics laws. It's much, much more ambiguous than that. Jaron, did you have a question?
Slightly, kind of unrelated. So if you get your license taken away, are you able to take the exam again and then get your license?
If a lawyer loses their license, can they take the exam again? No. It is possible to be reinstated, but I'm trying to think in 30 years, I'm not sure I've heard of anybody getting reinstated. If you lose your license, that's pretty much it. Could you go to another? It would be up to that state, but you would, with your application process, have to disclose that you had been disbarred or lost your license in another state. And I have a hard time thinking that any other state would allow you to practice law when you lost your license somewhere else. But that's a good question. Licensing of attorneys is a state-by-state thing. Good questions. So what that gets us to is, what is the role of business in society? Do businesses have any sort of ethical, moral obligation to be good citizens? Does a business have the obligation to operate in a way that doesn't harm the environment? Does a business have an obligation to contribute as a citizen of the community where it operates, or communities where they operate? And there's different schools of thought on that. You'll find some folks who believe that the role of business is to maximize profits. Period. That's the role of a business. You'll find another school of thought that says that businesses should be good citizens, which would include taking into account the effect that their business, their activities may have on society. Let me give you an example. This is a true story. There was a factory in Massachusetts that burned down, and it was in a small town. So let's say it was like not near as big as Columbus, but the town pretty much revolved around this textile factory. And the textile factory had been there for 100 years. It was owned by the same family. It was the largest employer in town. And if the textile factory went away, that would be catastrophic to the town. But it burned down. And the owners had to face the decision of, what do we do? Do we rebuild here? Do we take the insurance money and rebuild somewhere else where we could have cheaper labor, maybe better distribution, maybe a better labor force to pull from. We don't have to rebuild right here. And the tension, of course, is what responsibility did that textile mill have to stay in the town? So if you look at those different schools of thought, if the paramount overriding goal of a business is to maximize profit, and there's a better place to build that mill from a profit standpoint, then that would dictate that that textile mill ought to rebuild somewhere else and leave the town. But if you subscribe to the view that the business needs to be a good corporate citizen, then they would have some obligation to stay there. Now, in reality, it's not black and white. It's not one or the other. You're not in the maximize profits camp or the be a good corporate citizen camp. These two often mix, and I would argue that they vary depending on what's best for the company at the time. I mean, every company wants to be known as a good corporate citizen, right? And they want to do things that contribute to their communities, improve the welfare of their workers, that kind of thing. Until it comes down to, I mean, there's a certain point at which the company can't be such a good citizen that it makes no money, right? Because the company has a duty to the owners to make money. There are a lot of competing stakeholders and things like this. In the textile mill case, if we're talking about stakeholders, we've got the town, we've got the employees, we've got the vendors, we've got the owners of the company. I mean, they own the company. There's a duty somewhere in there to make money for the owners. And so there's always going to be this balance between maximizing profit and being a good corporate citizen. And most companies fall somewhere in between. Mr. Sanchez, what was your question?
It was more of a comment. During a portion of the last 5 years, there has been a shift in corporate ethics where financiers will look at something called your ESG, which is your environmental, social, and your governance board, and the guidelines you follow. And a lot of people now, unless you have a really good rating, they won't buy into your corporation or help finance it or whatever. There's been things like B corporations now. So over the last couple of years, there has been a shift in people not and corporations not to look so much at the bottom line, but rather your impact that they will have going forward.
That's a great point. There are even folks out there who will rate companies based on their ESG scores or their corporate citizenship scores and things like that. And there is a movement or an idea that you shouldn't do business with people who aren't socially responsible, right? The cynic would argue, the person who is in the businesses are here to maximize profits camp, those folks would argue the only reason people are promoting their corporate social responsibility or they're trying to maximize their scores in the ESG is for what? For profit, to look good so people will shop with them, right? I mean, that's what the cynic and that's what the maximized profit camp would say. If it were not profitable to spend a lot of time and money and lip service to corporate social responsibility, would companies really do it? I mean,
so even though they may hate it, they still are doing it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, it's good that they do. I mean, it's beneficial that they do. The question is, would they do that if it didn't? And I think maybe corporate social responsibility would look a lot different. I think back to about a couple things. One is, do y'all remember at the beginning of COVID when companies were tripping over themselves trying to get a commercial on the air about how much they care in these uncertain times. I mean, you couldn't get that commercial on there fast enough. And once somebody did it, then the rest of them had to look like they were also doing that for fear of being left out of that. Were they really doing that because they care, or were they doing that for PR, marketing purposes that would? Right, exactly. So I think about that, and then I think about when this time last year when the Ukraine war started, and you saw a couple companies pull out of Russia, but then you saw a bunch of other companies kind of waiting to see which way it was going to go. Then the more companies pull out of Russia, that sort of snowballed, and then you had more and more. And it wasn't like, and these are complex decisions. I don't expect large companies to be able to just pivot on a dime and say we're leaving, we're shutting down an operations in a country. But it was curious to me how there was a trickle, and then it built up more into a flood of companies leaving Russia. So I think about I'd love to know the calculus of each of those companies as they decide what to do. How much was, well, everybody else is doing it. We don't want to be left and get pointed the finger at, look, that company still does business in Russia. Everybody else left. How much of a bad PR hit are we going to take on that? I think that it's inevitable that in any business, businesses exist to make money, ostensibly. And so public relations and things like that, I mean, that's part of the calculus. I don't mean to be so cynical. I mean, that's part of the calculus. But it's just, how much is really driving it when it comes down to it. What would a company value with responsibility versus profits? There's a million different views on that. One of the things you're going to do for this unit that I'm assigning in the future is you're going to look at what companies started doing was they started publishing their own glossy corporate social responsibility reports once a year. And they say their goals, they highlight all of the things that they've done, here's all our initiatives, so on and so forth, so that if you wanted to go and see what a company was up to social responsibility-wise, you could read their report. Your assignment is going to be that you're going to look at one of those reports and we're going to critique it, not just parrot back what the company says it did. I want you to look at it critically and be like, do I buy this or not? I mean, do I think this is just fluff? Do I really believe that, I want you to look critically at what they say they're doing. But again, that's not for today. But that's kind of going to be where we're headed with this. So with that backdrop, the rest of the class today we're going to spend just exploring the gray areas in business ethics. And I can find them. Oh, please tell me I did not forget to bring them. Oh, I didn't. Okay. All right, for this is what I want to do for this, y'all, especially because I'm recording. Let's, can you guys in that back row come down to, let's just sort of concentrate somewhere right here either behind Nick or between Mr. Sanchez and Jaron. I'll give y'all a minute. You don't necessarily need to take any notes for anything else we're doing. But I want to come over here so that, let's see if I'm still in the video. Not really.
So is the microphone connected through Bluetooth, or is it a part of the actual webcam?
It's Bluetooth. All right, so say that again. Yeah, yeah. The fact that I can pull that off is nothing short of a minor miracle. All right, so this is nice and cozy. I like this. All right, so here's the first starting point for our discussion this morning. I will throw this out to you. Is lying wrong? Why that reaction, Emma? Certain situations is fine, certain it's not. I'm probably going to get up so that I can pick up more. But Noah, you said yes. Well, expand on that for me. Okay, so part of your religious beliefs dictate that lying is wrong. Is lying always wrong?
No.
Okay, why not? I'm coming to you, Nick. Hold on. Got some biblical examples of that. Okay, Nick.
Well, I would argue if we're going to use the religious argument, what if it's a greater sin to tell the truth, whether it puts someone in danger or this, that, or the other?
So you've got to weigh the pros and cons of what the lie is.
Because it's like, well, you shouldn't lie. Like, you murdered a guy cold blood. Yeah, you shouldn't lie about that. But like, if someone has to do something, is that their business?
So what I hear you say is, and this is kind of the main jumping off point is, it depends, right? Isn't that what I say the answer is to everything in this daggum class? It depends. I'll give you a couple of examples where I would venture to say that probably 100% of us have lied or been lied to. Santa Claus.
Nope.
Oh.
Your parents were like,
They were just like, yeah, he doesn't exist. Don't tell other kids though.
Noah never believed Santa Claus. All right, but I mean, did I tell my kids, listen, I mean, just think about it. There's this fat guy, he lives at the North Pole, and once a year he puts on this suit and these reindeer fly, and they pull him, and then he's going to come down the chimney, and he's going to deliver toys to every kid in the world. And he's watching you all the time. That's right. That is why I use that a lot. Santa's watching. Santa's watching. So that's one. I mean, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. I can think of anybody in here. Well, we don't. Any of the guys in here married? You guys any married guys? Say that again.
I said, if you're married,
Noah thinks that's where I'm going. Do you lie to your spouse? I'm not going to put anybody on the spot on that. But the thought, the example that came to mind was, baby, do these jeans make my ass look fat? Of course not. I mean, of course, never. The answer to that is always no, right? I'm just kidding. I'm not. But those are just examples. So you're exactly right. Is lying wrong? It depends. Generally speaking, we would say society says that you should be truthful. But as Nick pointed out, there might be some times when you might cause more damage with the truth than with a lie. So that is absolutely true. Let's do a different scenario. All right, you are selling consumer electronics like TVs, DVD players, that kind of thing. You looked in the paper this morning before you went to work, and you noticed that your competitor down the street is offering the same brand and model of TV, but for $100 less than your store. Later in the day, a customer comes in asking to buy that particular TV. You sell the customer that TV set without mentioning that she could buy it for $100 less at your competitors. Is that a lie?
No.
Why? Say that why, Shanti?
She's not necessarily lying, she's just not mentioning.
Well, and what else happened? She didn't ask him, right?
Well, also it's like, if the customer asks, I feel like most people who work in retail are going to be like, oh, tell them. But like, you're not just going to randomly go, oh, you're actually spending the worst amount of money You should be actually doing this, this, and this. Like, nobody wants to hear that.
All right, so I think what I'm hearing is that that's not a lie because there was no question asked. There wasn't anything untruthful about that. But what if the customer asked? What's your duty there? If you're the salesperson, the customer says, is this the cheapest price in town on this TV set? What's your duty there? What's your ethical duty there? You should tell them the truth.
I don't get paid enough, like, last a couple summers ago. I was like, what is it?
I don't get paid enough to con people. Well, Noah, you own the TV store. Do you want your employers saying that? I mean, your employees? I mean, if I'm the owner of the store, I don't know that I'm great with that. I'm not saying that I want my employee to say, no, nowhere else has it cheaper.
I feel like you have to kind of not you kind of got to say like, well, it's gonna be cheaper there, but like ours isn't gonna be broken. Ours will like you can't like say a lie like it'll last.
But could you promise that though, Jared? If you're saying, well, ours is better, I mean,
Ours won't show up. You can say ours won't show up broken or something, or we
Well, that
will.
implies, then you're getting into,
And-
are you implying that the other company?
May, yeah.
I mean,
Like, I can't-
if I'm the owner of the store, I don't want my employees being like, hey,
yeah, I see.
head on down the street, you can buy it cheaper. But I also don't want my employees lying to people. I mean, I think there's a better answer, which is along the lines of something like, look, I mean, it's surely possible. I mean, I think I may have seen it, but people compete in prices all the time. Any responsible shopper, if you're worried about getting the best prices, you should check around. But this is our price. What if, that's just interesting because most of the time when I ask this question, I get a really strong, you don't have any obligation to tell somebody that. What if it is your best friend's grandmother who's on a fixed income and she's like, is this the best price on this TV? Then what happens, Nick?
Nobody goes to spend their money somewhere else.
Then you're like, hey, going down the street, right?
That's where I've always been told God, family, then occupation. So it's just, again, it's going against the like you have what you believe is really contingent on.
Does anybody feel a strong pull of obligation to your employer? No? Robert? You do?
Like I'm gonna do my best work while I'm working because that's what I'm being paid for. And if it implies that I tell the truth or fabricate the truth, I'm gonna do that. But that's just because I've given so much time and effort to that business. I feel obligation to the owner since I work.
Does anybody feel like they would have an obligation to lie for their employer? I would think not. I would think not. Okay, so that was pretty strong on the opinion of not having the duty to the employer. You're all now the owners of the business. Do you expect your employees to have that duty of loyalty to you, to not be telling customers to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I also feel like, am I paying them fairly? Am I compensating them well? Am I like creating a good workplace environment? Because if I'm not paying them fairly, overworking them, and they're not in a good environment, why should I expect that they're going to be loyal to me?
So Nick's saying it's a two-way street.
So if you are
Loyalty is a two-way street.
they should do what's wrong.
So let's say that you are. Let's say that you are. Let's say that you pay more to your salespeople than any electronic store in town. You have better benefits, better vacation policy that every person who sells electronics in the town wants to work at your store.
Well, then I'd say at that point, we're not just doing price matching or.
So-
What if I'm not ethical?
But if you say that, then you're spending more on giving people the benefits, more on giving people their salaries, and you've got to get that money from somewhere, and maybe that's from charging extra $100 on TV that people are getting.
Well, here you
Well,
go.
then you list that as a benefit though for buying products. You'd be like, well, they don't have extended warranty. don't have guaranteed deliveries of this, this, and this.
Could be. You're trying to sell it other ways. Sanchez.
Out of personal experience, I have worked at a financial institution where we were out of all the others, we were the best compensated in our category. I'm not going to say which one. And we would have clients from another financial institution, which I actually banked with. And I would constantly try to get people from a rival institution to come over because we were treated so well and we got just over the top benefits that it just felt unfair not to try to convert them. I liked the other institution better for banking. There were cheaper fees. There were better mobile apps, no delays in deposits. But I felt an obligation, and I felt like I should do what was best for my employer, whether it infringed on my personal beliefs or not, to try to convert them. So if they were doing that for me, then there was no way I couldn't do that for them.
You felt a duty of loyalty to them. They treated you well. You're going to do your job to the best of your ability, which you felt included doing everything you could.
That's right.
Okay. Fair enough. Noah, you said, you would just price match. What if at $100 less, you make no money off that sale? That's your cost. Then what?
In that case, some stores do sell things at a loss. They do sell things at a loss because it knocks their competitors off the board. Like Publix, for example, we sold 99-cent strawberries for like a couple months.
Yeah, there are reasons to undercut price. That's right.
That was a loss, but no other store could do it.
But is it harder for you? Is it a harder decision for you if you'd have to lower your price to make no money?
Do that on everything, but you can't do that.
You said yes. You think so? I mean, so that's to my point that it's easy to say in the abstract, yes, let's be good citizens. Yes, let's act ethically. But if I'm faced with a choice of selling a TV and making $100 profit or selling a TV and making no profit, it's at least a harder decision. That's not near as easy as a decision. And so, I mean, to me, there's no way that the bottom line doesn't factor in at some point. And it would be and then the difference would just be what your what your circumstances are, what that business's beliefs are. There's a number of factors, which I've already mentioned today, because the calculus is really complicated. But money always is going to be part of it. All right, let's go on to you are selling a car that has been involved in a wreck. Your dealership has fixed it so that no one can tell. As far as you know, the car functions just fine. There appear to be no harmful effects from the wreck. A customer who is interested in the car says, "Has this car ever been involved in a wreck?" And you say, "As far as I know, it hasn't. I do know that it runs just fine." Is that a lie? Probably, yeah. That'd be a fraud. So is that wrong? Everybody's going to pretty much agree that that's wrong. What if the salesperson doesn't know the answer to it? Then what's the answer? I don't know. That's not a lie. What if you say, "As far as I know, it hasn't"? Is that a lie?
As long as it hasn't been.
No, but I'm saying, well,
If they know it is a lie, then no.
it depends on what the person knows. Okay. I got you on that.
Because all I know is it's repair. Well, it could have been repaired because it's real.
So misrepresentation crosses the line, I think, with what we're saying. If you knowingly say something that you know is false. What about this situation then? Let's move to this. You represent an investment company. Your company is selling stock in a company that you believe is overvalued. You would never buy it. However, you're told that there's a special push to sell this particular stock, and in fact, your company is offering trips to Hawaii for salespeople who sell a certain amount of stock. So you make sales presentations to prospects that include you saying, "This is one of the finest investments of its type on the market. I recommend that you sign up today." Is that a lie?
So, do we think that it's a bad investment, or do we just think that we don't like the company?
The way it's written said, you, the salesperson, think that the stock is overvalued. What you said was, "This is one of the finest investments of its kind. I recommend that you buy it."
I don't think it's a lie, but I think it's ethically wrong that you said that, because if you yourself don't believe it, then you shouldn't push it.
All right, let's go to that first part. Why isn't it a lie? I'm not saying you're wrong. We're just getting discussion.
The thing though, it's what you believe or can you like prove it on pen and paper.
Right.
You can
Whether or
see
not
that
it's an actual
Okay.
value.
Because what the salesperson says was, I believe this is one of the finest investments on the market.
Well, okay, for example, I don't really value Apple that much. I don't think they've done anything innovative in like a decade. But that being
Lightning strike you. I'm just
Ooh.
kidding. I'm an Apple person.
Oh, I got it. And I'm like, that's fine, but I don't personally value that company. I think they're overrated.
Right.
That
I'm
being said,
kidding with you.
it's not a bad investment if the company is being shown to go up. Well, I don't think that they're valued at what they should be. That being said, it might still be a good investment.
Well, and how do we define this is one of the finest investments on the market? I mean, what does that mean?
It only takes time to prove that.
What,
It should be said rather, this is one of the finest, instead of saying like, this is considered.
this is considered, but considered by whom?
We're usually appealing to a higher authority, so say experts on finance.
Yeah.
Analysts.
Also, well, I mean, if they're doing a push, they have to have data for it, right?
Or I don't know, a little simple. I think stock companies they lie all the time. Right? I think if you're working in that company, you just got to get ready to do it.
You just gotta, it's not a question of if you're gonna lie, it's just how much can you deal with? How much can you stomach? How much can you live with yourself for your lying? But has anybody in here ever been a salesperson? I mean, Robert, you were talking, it seems like quasi. I mean, there's a fine line between sales and lying. I mean, we have this idea of this, something called puffery, which is just, we're just pumping up our product. We're making it sound good. We're, trying to, entice somebody to buy it. But we might not necessarily be lying about it. But at what point does our sales pitch cross into unethical territory? And that's what I want you to think about there. I don't know that, I think I'd be a terrible salesperson. It would just be awful.
It's a lot easier to sell a product that you actually believe in than it is something that you because you don't have to lavish it when you're selling it. You're speaking from like experience. You're like, yeah, this damn good thing. I like it. I use it myself. But when you go, I don't use it myself, but I have been debating whether or not to change to it, then kind of.
How much do you feel that is there a limit to what you feel you should project on customers of what you personally believe? Like, you think it's a great investment. Should you really be projecting that on salespeople? I mean on your customers?
I feel like,
Where's the line there?
well, I feel like showing that you have some kind of belief in the product or whatever, or that you like it in some way, shape, or form, it kind of connects, like the product to a person and then that person to another one. That's how I look at it. As far as how, you know, how much of it, you if you're trying to sell, you don't tell them also the bad experiences of it. You tell them all the pluses. You can go, oh, this is great because, there's 25,000 ATMs nationwide, but those ATMs are super faulty than any other institution. But the convenience of it, great. So
How many of y'all expect a salesperson to be bullshitting you to some degree? Everybody. I mean, so you go in taking it with a grain of salt a little bit, or you should be questioning. You expect that, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I'm a salesman myself.
You do?
Yeah.
You did you miss the car sale?
I was
Come on down. Come on down. Come on down. Nick.
I would say it is a fine line because, like, I don't think as a customer I ever go into a salesman and expect them to tell me straight up about the faults in their own company because, like, they're not really supposed to. I understand that. I'm not going to make them lose their job over what I think or I'm going to buy. So I guess what I would do is I'd double check and look at other companies and compare them. Like, I feel like that's your job as a consumer.
Do y'all think that it's ethical for companies to give incentives to their salespeople based on their level of sales? Anybody have a problem with that? No? Everybody thinks that's okay?
As long as they're not encouraged to, like, straight up lie.
Do you think that, well, how do you guard against that? If you're an employer and you have an incentive-based sales reward program, are you worried at all about that making your salespeople more incentivized to push something or cross ethical boundaries? You would be worried about that, Kennedy? You worried about that some. Robert?
there's a really good case study for this with Wells Fargo. They had
There is.
Yeah, they had such good, or they were so heavy on pushing sales, and their compensation packages and their incentives that sales reps for them, they would just make up fake accounts.
Mhm.
It created an entire thing, and I think they're still paying billions of dollars in fees for it.
They are. Yeah, if you're not familiar with that, Wells Fargo was incentivizing their customer service reps based on number of accounts open. So what they were doing, they would go in and open all these accounts for customers that the customers didn't need or maybe didn't even know about, but it was boosting their numbers and they were getting paid on it. And that all came crashing down. Did you work for Wells Fargo? Okay, good. I hate Wells Fargo. Robert did not work for Wells Fargo. All right, Darius, you've been quiet, but you've been hiding back there and you sell cars.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Okay, so well, yeah, I could just piggyback off what you were talking about the incentives. So we do have incentives. So it'd be like we call it bonus units. So say for instance, we had a car that's been there for too long. Of course, at that point we take in a negative loss on it because the longer it sits on the lot, the longer the value continues to drop. So at that point, our GM will give us an incentive saying, hey, if you could get this out sooner, we're gonna take a loss anyway at the auction. I'd rather take a loss with my salesman and just get them more money instead to be able to push the unit out. At the point where I wouldn't say it's unethical, I say it's very ethical. I mean, we're not lying about the product. We're just telling you the most important things of it. Like you said, for experience, it boils down to experience. But federal, like government laws on certain cars, all of them the same.
Well, what if I come to you and I'm interested in 2 cars?
Okay.
And I've narrowed it down to 2. I'm going to buy one of them.
Okay.
One of them is going to make your company more money than the other. Maybe the other one is that one you're talking about that's been sitting there and we just need to get rid of it.
Okay.
Does that change your approach to me as a salesperson?
Not necessarily, because at the end of the day, it's strictly off your buying power. Your credit is what allows you to buy if you plan on financing a vehicle. So even if you're looking for that vehicle, and generally speaking, a lot of customers think that, hey, getting the cheaper unit, it'd be easier to finance. No, it's completely opposite. Those are the hardest vehicles to finance because the bank look at it as like the life left in the vehicle. So, I mean, if you got a $7,000 car, 9 times out of 10, it got over 100,000 miles. It's over 10 years old. So at that point, the bank's like, I could probably only get like 2-3 years out of this stuff.
What if the 2 cars that I've narrowed it down to one of them counts towards your incentive bonus for the month, but the other one doesn't. Does that change your behavior in
No, not
selling
necessarily.
me the car?
No, because the way we work, no matter what, you still get to a bonus. So, for instance, right now we go up to 8 cars. So, like say if I'm on 7 cars and you come to me, I won't really necessarily care because either way I'm gonna still get a bonus.
But let's say you're not
All
going
right.
to.
So
on one
say
of
I'm
them.
at like this is my first car sale of the month. No, it's still not gonna change because at the end of the day you still get to it.
Have you? You don't have to answer this question.
Mhm.
This is not you, a personal to you. Have you seen any behavior? Do you have any examples that you think crossed an ethical line?
I've definitely seen some.
Can you tell us?
Yeah.
All
So
right, give me one.
one unethical, I could like something similar to what he said, Wells Fargo. So I work at the one AutoNation down on the south.
You don't have to tell us. But that's all right.
So this is not my
He's
store.
advertising
Yeah,
now, so he's
yeah.
selling.
So
in
this
class.
is not my store. So the North store that's on Veterans by Elva Carroll, I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all know about Power Sports. So a couple of these salesmen and old manager, they ordered. I'm not sure if any of y'all know what the Ram TRX is and the Jeep 392 Wrangler and all that stuff. So those are with the high power motors that cost like $80,000, $100,000 cars. So at the point they was ordering a whole bunch of them. I mean, because in Columbus, not too many people could afford a $100,000 car. Let's be real. So at that point, so a lot of our customers come from out of town. So they was ordering like 20 TRXs, 20 Jeep Wranglers. Like so, at one point they had like $2 million worth of cars on the ground. Chryslers, I mean, that's what we go through Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. They usually don't approve for nobody to get that many cars. Like even the highest selling dealership in this nation won't get that many at once. So what they were doing was kind of in a sense making fake profiles in a sense, ordering up the vehicles to be able to get them ordered here. So when they do get here, they could just already have them and sell them. So that's how it was kind of went. And then those same managers and that salesperson, the salesperson used to probably be in every position over his career. So they would order these vehicles, get it on employee discount because our employee discount is way cheaper than y'all. He'll buy the car, turn around and sell it the car, match me at TK. So they were doing that over and 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 over again. Then they got caught. So yeah.
So who was being harmed by that?
Who was being harmed? I wasn't necessarily nobody. The way I was looking at it was nobody, but they call it curbing the dealership. You also like lying to the dealerships and hey, we're selling so many units, but naturally all you're doing is just buying it as a salesperson, turn around selling and making 10K profit. I mean, I hated the idea, but at the same time, I was like, I wasn't bad.
They figured something out.
Yeah,
right?
I was like, dang, that works.
I think that changes our calculus too about who's the victim. And I think that a lot of, and you see in white collar crime or in business crime, the thought is, well, I mean, I'm not hurting anybody, but that goes back to your personal ethics. If you think something's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, why should whether something's right or wrong depend on whether or not it hurt anybody? Mm-hmm. And that's different for everybody. I mean, that's a different calculation for everybody. And the bigger the reward, yeah. The more needy you are. I mean, desperate people do desperate things. Yeah. I mean, these are we can all say, and you're going to do for one of your assignments, right? Your personal code of ethics. But we'd be hard pressed to find anybody who says that they could live that in, day out, all the time. I mean, life happens. I'm not saying you all should be unethical at any point. I'm just saying it's not black and white. Mm-hmm. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hill from his experience? That's a great experience. I appreciate you sharing that. I had something I was going to add to that, but now I've forgotten what it was. All right, I'll go to the next thing while I remember what I was going to say. All right, let's see. We got a couple more. Oh, here's one. Who in here has anybody in here never worked, not had a job? Everybody's had a job. All right. A friend gives you tickets to a music concert, but you have to work that night. You call your employer early in the day and tell them, I'm not feeling well. I won't be able to work tonight. Is that a lie? Does anybody think that's not a lie? Or do everything that's a lie? Is it wrong? It is? All right, see, we got some. All right, who said, all right, you said yes, Jared. Why is it wrong?
So, just for sake of it, is like the day of, like you aren't giving him time in advance to actually get somebody or like actually. 'Cause I know.
What if they can cover your shift easily?
They for instance, one time, I typically work every other Sunday, but I thought I had a Sunday off, and I went somewhere and I didn't have my phone on, and they didn't know where I was. So it wasn't even that I called out, and my shift was easily covered, but there was still a line of, well, I still had the, what's the word, like I should have at least given him a word, and that word needs to be the truth. If I'm not going to be there, I need to say I'm not going to be there. And if I'm going to say it, I'm going to be truthful. For sake of being sick, like right now with COVID, is he going to put you out of work for a week because he heard that you were sick and you haven't told him what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to make that a point for the rest of your work week or just that pay period? He's definitely going to look at you, and if he does hear from your coworker, if you tell them you went to a concert, well, I thought you were sick. So it kind of just, how long can you hold that lie? Is that lie really worth it? At the end of the day, you're not getting paid for it, and someone does not want to.
Okay, I love one of the things you said. Is that lie really worth it? Is that part of our calculus all the time? Hell yes. Is it worth it? What are the consequences if I get found out versus, is it worth it? That is a great one. Nick, go ahead.
I would say that I wouldn't lie for that, but depending on your work environment, I know that the one I'm in right now, we're box office, so we sell tickets to shows. And depending on the shifts, you can easily trade them with people. And so I wouldn't like lie to my boss and be like, "Oh, hey, I'm just not going to be able to be there." But I would definitely see if I could try and trade it. But like at my old job, we definitely couldn't. We were understaffed.
But in this instance, you said, I'm not coming in today because I'm sick.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would.
All right, Darius.
So like for us, like you're not selling like basically like we're like our own subcontractor. You're not selling anything, you don't make any money. End of the day, it's up to you. Us in our sense, I mean, it's just more so gonna be that guilt you're gonna have while you're there. Like, man, I could have been making some money. I'm at a concert.
But you don't feel guilty about lying to the boss.
I'm not.
All right, Shanti, you said no right away. It wasn't wrong. Talk to me about that.
As someone who's worked in food service since like high school, and I've been like server, I've worked I've worked at different restaurants,
Bless your heart.
and I don't care. Like I know I'm like a reliable worker, and I know I have like respect for my managers. And there's been some like I'm not one of those servers that call out all the time, because there's always gonna be those people where like I respect my managers enough to be like, I will call them like hours in advance to get someone else to cover my shift. But there's been times where I'm like, this is something like I can't miss. Like, this is a family event. My family are in town, and or it was last minute, or like, because sometimes there's just emergencies, or sometimes it's just like. But if in this scenario and it was a concert, I would 100% call out, and I would be like, hey, I'm like throwing up in my bathroom, but I would call them like 3 hours in advance, because I'm still nice enough to like let them know that. But also, it's just 4 hours.
It was a
I'd be,
really
like,
nice lie.
missing.
She was so nice about it.
Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I agree with what he said, because like in his scenario, but also from my perspective, we're like, there's always going to be servers that also just like they need a shift. They're always at like texting other people like, hey, please, can I please have your shift? There's always somebody, and like, I don't know. I don't think it's like crazy, like that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, it's like depending on how many tables you get that night, you'd only be making like $6 to $2 an hour if you don't like get tips or anything. So it's like, I'd rather go to a concert than like work a slow Sunday night or something.
It's just,
I
it's
don't
so
know.
interesting to me that we go from, we can take in the abstract this principle that we shouldn't lie. It's unethical to lie. And then when we get in these examples, it depends. It depends on the context of everything, right? I mean, that's not, I mean, that's everybody. Yes.
I say I've also been a server for like a couple years, and it's such a different environment that like people always want to work, and then also you have to remember that your boss is not the one paying you. We get paid like $2 an hour, so it's really the customers that are paying you. So it's kind of, you are loyal to your company in a way, but at the same time, at the end of the day, they don't give you the money that you need. Like, if you want to work, yeah, but also people, I mean, yeah, people call out. I mean, they just don't show up. And
What if
nothing
you're the
happens.
only employee? It's a one-person job. There's only one person there at a time. And if you call out sick to go to that concert, they'll just have to close for that night.
But also, that's
I'd
not
feel
my
too bad.
responsibility. Yeah, that's like not my problem.
Not my problem. I love it.
But as an employer, it is your problem. Or as an employee, I feel like it is your problem because they've given you that time for that. And since that's not there, the company's not making any money, and it is contingent on you.
Well, I've worked in a corporate chain restaurant,
Mhm.
and I've also worked in like a small like business, like local downtown, and the difference is like huge. But at the end of the day, like the small restaurant downtown, I know they're still gonna be making money at the end of
That's
the
good
day,
value.
and I know that like even if I do show up and I only get like 4 tables, I'm still gonna have to do side work that I'm gonna stay until like 2 hours past like my actual shift time, and I'm not getting paid for the side work. I get paid like from the customers, like she said.
What's the most unethical thing that you've seen somebody do?
I've seen people like,
You said food service. I'm like, there's a lot of ways this could go.
yeah, like
What's the biggest horror story that you have from working in food service? Like what's the
from a coworker.
no,
Oh,
like
the
it's
craziest?
customer.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I worked at Olive Garden for over a year, and I worked to go. And Olive Garden to go in Columbus is probably like the most busy to go out of all the other chains. And there's this. It was like a random Saturday, and there was like this huge crowd that came in all dressed in pink, and we thought there was a wedding that happened. So everybody's like saying, "Congratulations." It turns out it was a funeral. What? They were all dressed in pink because a little girl died. But her favorite restaurant was Olive Garden. And it was a crowd that started off from 15, then it turned to 25, then it turned to 30. It was a huge crowd. We didn't have like any tables. And at the end of the day, they decided to do all separate checks, and they broke all our machines, and we couldn't like get any payments for like 2 hours, and to the point where all to-go machines were broken that people like weren't even paying for their to-go orders because we couldn't take their payment. They like we all of our machines were broken.
So everybody got free food?
Well, to-go did for like a little bit, but literally everybody for that funeral party, there was like almost 50 of them, all separate individual checks, and there wasn't like people who were like, hey, like we're gonna pay for this group. No, it was all like individual
How
checks.
mad were everybody else in the restaurant?
Really mad because other servers couldn't like, they couldn't get their checks out, they couldn't end their tables, and like for Olive Garden, it's you got your endless soups, you got your endless salads, and your endless breadsticks.
Oh, I forgot about the endless.
So
That's right.
it was a lot. It was a crazy day, and there's people flooded out of the restaurant, and everybody was saying congratulations to them, but it was horrible.
Oh, that sounds horrible. All right, does anybody have any stories, any unethical stories or anything they want to share, experiences they've had?
Well, I also have a crazy Olive Garden story.
All right, let's hear it. Crazy Olive Garden story, let's hear it.
But an unethical part was one time when I worked at Olive Garden, I worked in Macon, and the GM ended up saying a bunch of these. So we have like some steaks. It's not that many of them, but they kept saying that they were going bad, and they would just take them home and feed them. They would just eat them with their family. And she owned the store, so I mean, no one really. Oh, I also worked at Francesca's, and my boss got arrested for $10,000 embezzlement on Black Friday when I was the closer. And
From the store?
From the store, because she had this guy in like India was trying to convince her that he was their boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. She was like 50, but
One of the scams.
yeah, and so she stole $10,000 on Black Friday, and then I was closing, and I had to call the manager and be like, "We are $10,000 short. Like, I don't know where the
You had to deliver that message?
Yes, and she knew, and she'd already taken it. And so then I got in a lot of trouble. But then, like 3 days later, the cops showed up, and then she got arrested. And
How'd they catch her?
apparently the big boss knew for a while, and she had been doing it for like a month and a half. And they just needed to like wait until she stole enough to arrest her.
Did they act like? Did you feel like they were accusing you?
Yes. No.
You
she
felt like you
definitely
were a
was accusing
suspect?
me. I had to stay there until about 4:30 a.m. I also had the flu that day, so that was not fun.
That sounds horrible.
But at Olive Garden, some man got really angry about the endless pasta and like or the soup or whatever, and he locked himself in the bathroom, pooped everywhere, and spread it on the wall, and then pulled out a gun on one of our employees.
That would be some mental illness.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't
Yeah,
say
it's
that.
like-
I don't say that lightly. I mean, like that is. There's some. What'd you say?
I asked if there was a naked.
Oh, she don't want to go here. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't one here.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Darius, what's your story?
So I had a case something similar like with fraud. We had a guy come in, had it set up so smoothly, like wasn't like usually you think somebody that's coming scammer gonna come in there, sunglasses, mask or whatnot. So he came in, had a perfect ID, matched it with a whole different state. He said he was from Washington, DC. So he came down here. We had a Hellcat. That's $100,000 car, and my gosh, if I'm not mistaken, it was 127.6 something after taxes. He had the guy's social information, address, everything perfect, ideally lined up. Was able to get approved through the bank, got it signed up. But we was kind of iffy on the whole aspect the whole time. And the only way we was able to catch on a little bit was his ID. Washington, DC, their ID, their shoulders are like kind of transparent on their IDs, but his was completely like solid full. So my manager was like, that's kind of strange. I was like, I never even knew that, so I was like, just go right past me. So finance, of course, they kept digging into it. Then a couple of days later, the banks called, but like, hey, this is not that guy. The person, this actual person he's portraying, just called and said, hey, I didn't make a purchase for $127,000. Like,
Was the car off the lot by that
oh,
point?
it was gone.
Oh.
As in, like,
So what? So did y'all get it back? Did he get it?
So by the time they ended up catching the vehicle, it was in Texas, and it was chopped up at that point.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is what I'll close with saying to y'all. That you, like I said at the beginning, you're going to do this personal code of ethics assignment, and I don't take that lightly. I really want you to examine what it is that you believe, and I want you to be very serious about looking out for yourselves in your employment situation, because at the end of the day, when the chips are down, people are going to protect their own selves. And so you just need to be very careful that you always stick to what you believe in, no matter what, when you're making decisions about how you're going to conduct business or conduct yourselves and all that. You got to stay true to yourself. That would be my advice to you. So we will start a new unit next week. The only thing you have to do between now and next Tuesday is do assignment 2. It's due Monday night, and I'll put it up when I get back to the office after class. All right. Y'all have a good one.
Is that the multiple choice?
Yeah.